We are still waiting for a few people to come in, but we will make a start. So hello everyone and welcome to Series 4 of the GBA Lightbulb Sessions. The Great British Entrepreneur Awards, in association with BT Skills for Tomorrow, have designed a free live stream series of Lightbulb Sessions to support small businesses and entrepreneurs with insightful and advice-driven sessions featuring some of the UK's brilliant entrepreneurial minds to illuminate your path to entrepreneurial success. You can find out more about BT Skills for Tomorrow by heading to their website at www.bt.com/skills for tomorrow, or by clicking on the link in the comment section. In today's session, Great British Entrepreneur Awards Head of Content Jonathan Davis will sit down with Sam Jones, founder of Gener8. Sam recently appeared on BBC's Dragon's Den, where he delivered the best pitch ever that consequently went viral with over 20 million views online. He'll discuss today successful techniques, what you should and shouldn't include in your pitch, the positive impact this can have on your business. This session will take your pitch from good to great. There is an opportunity to ask questions during the session. If you have a question you'd like to ask, you can pop this in the Q&A function at the bottom of your screen, and we'll do our best to answer these towards the end of the session. Please note that there will be a poll available towards the end of the session today, and all answers will be anonymous. And with that, I'll pass over to our host, Jonathan Davis.
Yeah, thank you, Chloe. Welcome everyone to the session this morning, and welcome to you, Sam, and thank you for joining us today. I guess obviously the nature of this discussion and the nature of your appearance on Dragon's Den, probably a lot of the attendees today do know at least a little bit about you. But it'd be great to get a bit more background to yourself and to Gener8 as a business to start us off.
Sure, certainly. So first off, thank you so much for having me, Chloe and Jonathan. What an introduction to live up to now. So yeah, a little bit about me. So really quickly, before founding Gener8, I'll rewind a little bit. I used to work at Red Bull, the energy drink, as part of their global marketing team, where I was personally responsible for about 1/3 of their worldwide advertising. So that's everything you see on television, that you hear on the radio, that you see in the cinema, and that you see in print, billboards, etc. And it was amazing fun. But while I was there, I realized that everything that we do online is being tracked, and that every question we search for on Google, every website that we click on, every item that we buy online, tens and often hundreds of different companies are collecting this information, hiding behind those cookie banners, and tracking us and tracking everything that we do. And consequently, they're selling that and making money from it. And what I thought was that there would come a time where this needed to change. And I thought once people realized that this is happening, they'd want one of two things, either the ability to stop this or the ability to earn from it themselves. So very simply, I left Red Bull and I founded Gener8 to build technology that empowers people to control or earn from their data. So really simply, we're a browser that's totally free and anyone can use. And we give people a very simple choice between privacy mode, where we stop all companies from tracking you online, or rewards mode, where we share points. We give our users points in return for sharing their data with us, and we aim to enable them to exchange these points for products, vouchers, or donations to charity, so they can really earn from their data. So that's a quick bit of background there.
Yeah, excellent. As I said, probably some people have at least an idea of what the business does from the pitch, but it's great to kind of get a bit more background from there. And I can see one person in the chat is already a user and has received their first payout. So it's exciting to see. Obviously, the reason that we're here is that your pitch has been labelled the best, if not one of the best ever to appear in the Den, and I think Peter Jones described it as exquisite, I think. So obviously we're here to try and learn about what made that pitch so great, how you how you developed it, how you delivered it, and so hopefully the attendees can kind of take those learning into their own pitches. So we'll start off. Is there one single factor that you think stands out above the rest about why your pitch was so successful?
Well, I think it's a really good question. I think in general, the single most important thing when pitching your business is to have the right mindset. And what I mean by that is how you think about yourself and how you view the situation will impact everything that happens next. So you have to start by reminding yourself that you're not there singing for your supper. Never stand hat in hand asking for money, because that's the quickest way to turn someone off. Instead, you've got to believe that you're sharing a secret with the investor. So you're telling them about an opportunity that they're not aware of, and you're pulling away the curtain and unveiling a hidden truth that's been in front of their eyes all along. And if they're lucky, you might be willing to invite them on the journey with you, because that's a much more exciting proposition than standing there saying, I need your cash, give me your cash. So I think you have to go in with that mindset that you're providing them the opportunity to join you on an amazing journey.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, certainly from my point of view, one of the things that was so great about certainly the opening part of the pitch was it was a clear explanation of the problem, of the issue. And then, in a very, very brief nutshell, what the solution was, and then the kind of more detailed explanation of it. So I guess that's where the kind of the hook comes into them, and be part of this, be part of the solution. So I think that's really wonderful. I've just noticed someone in the chat asking for the recording, and it has been, the link to Sam's pitch is just placed in the chat function a little bit higher if you do want to catch on to that. But obviously pitching takes a great deal of planning, a great deal of preparation. What was the very first step that you took in preparing for that pitch specifically?
Yeah, so for Dragon's Den, it was the obvious homework of watching as many previous episodes as I could find. And I enjoy watching Dragon's Den, so it wasn't hard homework by any means. But in particular, what I was looking for was any other similar businesses that had been on, so technology businesses, because at least we have that in common. And then what I wanted to understand was, how did they present their idea? Because the challenge is, unlike a product which you can hold up and show and the dragons can touch, with technology it's much, much harder to convey in that forum of Dragon's Den. So I wanted to see, how had other businesses done this? And then obviously I wanted to understand what were the key questions that kept coming up. And then I was just, in my head, every pitch I was watching, I was thinking, how would I answer that? How would I respond to that? So in a way, it felt like I'd done Dragon's Den 100 times over by the time I went in, from just watching the programs and running through it like that. But what I also did in addition to this is something that I think people should do in advance of every pitch. And that's that I reached out to 2 or 3 entrepreneurs who had been in that situation. So in this case, it was 2 or 3 other people who had been on Dragon's Den. And I spoke to them about their experience. So what was it like? What were the stumbling blocks? What were the challenges? What happened behind the scenes? What happened afterwards? So that way I could be really, really prepared, because you have to be as prepared as you can be for a moment like this. And it's laying the foundation in doing your homework and going in there fully up to speed so that you can make the most of the opportunity.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the research point is absolutely key there, knowing who you're talking to, who you're pitching to, and what makes them tick. I think that's a really, really important point. So obviously what we see on the final program isn't the full pitch. How long was it in total for you?
So in real life, the pitch lasted about 2 hours. And of course, the dragons go into all sorts of questionings and lines of conversation, just like when you're doing a normal VC pitch or a pitch to angel investors. So they're asking about lifetime value, about forecasts, about cost of acquisition, all of the nitty-gritty details. And then, of course, what happens after the pitch is they edit this to make it however they want, whatever story they want to show on TV. So in my case, when I was in there under the lights, I was fortunate insofar as the dragons instantly understood what it was that I was conveying. They agreed with the notion that people's data is valuable and that people should be able to control and earn from it. So we got off on the right footing, and then it was really just a conversation as opposed to a battle. So there wasn't any moments where there were kind of fists up and we're on the back foot fighting. It was more, here's what we're doing, here's why I'm doing it, here's why I believe it will succeed. And then it was opening to them and saying, what can you bring to the table? And a lot of that conversation didn't make it to air, but there was a lot of time where the dragons were telling me, here's what I can do to help Gener8. So it was a really good dialogue. But then one other thing that's probably worth mentioning, which again is specific to Dragon's Den, is that actually one of the hardest parts was that before you pitch, you obviously are waiting in this dressing room or backstage, and you have to arrive really, really early. So I got there at 5:30 a.m., which is literally the time that you have to arrive at the studio. And I didn't pitch until 5:30 p.m. And I was told, so 12 hours of waiting, and I was told initially that I'd be on around 9:30 in the morning. So the toughest part was this mental challenge where you're trying to keep calm and you're trying to keep relaxed, but the tension's building. You don't know when you're going to go on. And then suddenly you're thrust into this crazy environment with cameras and lights and these dragons. So it was a hell of an experience, and it was really good fun. But certainly the preparation beforehand helped me to maintain calm in those moments.
Yeah, absolutely. And I guess, although not everyone is going to get the chance to pitch on Dragon's Den and not have that 12 hour wait, quite considerable, but they're not going to have, the lights in the studio and everything. But I guess that message of the preparation delivers the calm beforehand. So even if you're turning up half an hour, 15 minutes before you're pitching to your potential investor, it's that element that really keeps you calm and confident going into it.
Certainly, absolutely.
Yeah, and so how early from filming did you start preparation? So kind of how long was that journey before filming day?
So I was told about 3 weeks in advance when the filming day would be, which I think that's unique due to COVID, because it was meant to be filmed earlier, and then it happened last year. So all of the production for the whole of the BBC stopped, and then they had this window where it opened up. So I was told about 3 weeks in advance, and it was from there that obviously I started getting to work very quickly in terms of thinking, what's the pitch going to be? What's the story I can tell? What questions may they ask? And then watching 100 episodes of Dragon's Den too, to kind of do that homework and do that research. Yeah, and then obviously do your first draft, see how that sits after a day or two, redraft it, change it a little bit, and use that time.
Yeah, and so that sort of 3 week window that you mentioned, is that the kind of normal kind of preparation time that you would have for a pitch outside of the kind of the TV space?
So, I mean, outside of Dragon's Den, I think it's much easier to prepare and to do pitches. And it depends if you're speaking to an angel or a high net worth individual versus a venture capital fund, because they're going to have different angles and different approaches. But what I've learned, so we raised obviously a little bit on TV, about 60,000. After the television appearance aired, I then raised about 2.1 million. And prior to that, I'd also raised some money as well to get the business up and running. So what I found in general is that it's a game of kissing a lot of frogs. You need to speak to a lot of people. The first 5 times that you do your pitch is going to be very, very different to the next 10, 15, 20, and 30 times, because naturally, like anything in life, you'll get better as you practice. But the only way to practice is to get in the ring and actually pitch to real people with real money. So my biggest advice for all entrepreneurs starting out is, when you do have your first opportunities to pitch to someone, and when you start lining up more and more people that you pitch to, try to ensure that the first people you speak to are the least important to you. If you've got someone that you're desperately want to invest, make sure you've done 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 pitches before you get to them, because I promise you, no matter how good your first pitch is, your 10th one will be better and your 100th one will be better again. So it is a game of practice. The more people you speak to, the more questions you get, the better you become at answering them.
Yeah, excellent. And you mentioned there about once you got the filming date, you started to kind of craft your pitch, and you mentioned there the kind of evolution that your pitch goes through. Did you find that the Dragon's Den pitch was an evolution of what you've done already, or was it kind of an entirely new pitch?
So I customized a lot of it, for the main reason being that I wanted to make sure that we were speaking through the investors to the people at home, because for us, it was a real opportunity to get some exposure and to tell our story. So I wanted to remove any mumbo jumbo words that aren't commonly understood or commonly known. I wanted to get rid of all of the industry jargon and just speak really simply and really truthfully about what happens, why this is a problem, and what we're doing to solve it. So in that sense, the mission of what we're doing was always exactly the same. It never changed. But the way that I conveyed that in the pitch on Dragon's Den would be slightly different to if I was speaking to another audience. But I think that that's true in the sense that you should always customize your pitch to whoever you're talking to. And what pairs with that is going back to the research that we were talking about too. You need to really understand everything about your audience, so about the investor. Everything from what's their average check size to what were the last businesses they invested in, to how much money do they have left in their fund or ability to invest, to do they lead investments or follow on. You really want to know all of this info so that then when you give your pitch, you can try and hit their sweet spot, because there's no point in offering something which is just totally different to what the person's interested in. So yeah, it's all about researching those investors and understanding them.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's kind of even in the quarter of an hour that we've been speaking, I think that's kind of been a key thing, the research and understanding going into it. In terms of rehearsing your pitch, I know we've just spoken about the you know, as you said, if you've got someone that you're really trying to get some money from, the kind of the big pitch, the big investor, to pitch to a number of smaller or less important ones beforehand. But let's say, I imagine there might well be some attendees today who haven't yet done a pitch. So in terms of rehearsing, how much time would you recommend spending on doing that, and to who? Because, you know, I guess your husband or your wife or your mum or your dad probably aren't going to be the best person to kind of give feedback on the actual pitch itself and the business.
So I think it definitely will differ for different people in terms of whether you're comfortable and confident speaking openly, or whether you're someone who would rather show a physical product that you've made, because we all have different strengths and weaknesses. So I think the first thing is ensuring that whatever you do is playing to your strengths. So if you absolutely hate speaking to a stranger, then you probably shouldn't be pitching your business. You probably need to find a co-founder or someone with that skill set who is able to do that, and you can concentrate on building the product or whatever your specialty is. But in general, I think the approach that you have to take is start by recognizing that the only part of this conversation that you can fully control is the pitch itself. Everything that happens after that is open to where do they want to go with the questioning. So what you have to make sure is that you really are super confident and you have that initial pitch dialed down to a T. And you probably need a couple of different versions of it, where you want one-minute version, which is your quickest, shortest kind of elevator pitch, and then another kind of 3-minute version in those instances where you have a little bit more time to explain. So I would say always make sure that you have a couple of pitches kind of in your head, and it shouldn't be too tricky because it's your business, it's what you've been working on, it's your idea. So really you're just trying to convey it to a stranger. And then the second piece of advice there would be, when you're going into a pitching scenario, definitely either beforehand or at the start of the meeting, tee it up and ask, how long is it okay if I give a 3-minute intro? Because they might say, no, go quicker. And then, you know, okay, I'll give my 90-second one or 1-minute one, or they might say, no rush, take 10 minutes, and then you can really take your time. So definitely ask an open question so that you know where you can physically pitch it and what you can choose. And in terms of practice, I think the best thing to do is try and find other entrepreneurs or other founders, people who might be in the same industry or space as you, or maybe they're in a totally different space, but people who have probably done pitches before. So perhaps they've raised investment successfully, and reach out to them and see, can I chat to you? Can I give you my pitch? Can I get some feedback for in 15 minutes, just super fast? And ask for advice nice and openly. In addition to that, there's loads of great forums in London where entrepreneur meetups and all sorts of opportunities and networking events, which are definitely worth kind of attending so that you can broaden your founder network, speak to others and learn what's worked for them.
Excellent. That's a really interesting piece of advice. One thing that we haven't touched on yet is the figure. So it was 60,000 that you pitched for?
Correct.
In return for 10%, was it?
Correct, yeah.
So how important was it for you, and indeed, you know, in pitching generally, to get that figure right? I mean, our session last week was with a partner at Russell Cook who was talking about making your business attractive to investors, and he talked about the importance of of not asking for too much, not asking for too little. So how do you go about identifying that figure?
Absolutely, the $1 million question. So I'll tell you, I'll answer in two parts. Firstly, by answering what I did on Dragon's Den, and then secondly, by giving more broader advice. So in terms of Dragon's Den, for me, it was never about the money. So I viewed it as an enhanced equity deal, in the sense that what we were really doing was giving away some equity in order to bring on board an active investor who can help accelerate the growth of the business. And then in addition to that, we get that added benefit of the exposure through the television that can help us to grow. So I deliberately pitched a low valuation to try and reflect and ensure that Gener8 was attractive. And in doing that, it removed any of the combativeness that you sometimes see on Dragon's Den, where there's that big argument around, why is your business worth X? I think it's worth Y. So instead, I deliberately put it nice and low to make sure that we just diffused that line of argument. And consequently, it was a bit of a gamble doing that, because you never know what's going to happen. But consequently, it worked really well, because we ended up going viral on Facebook with more than 20 million views. We averaged a new download every 10 seconds for about 8 weeks. And off the back of that, I was able to raise a larger round, still modest, of about 2.1 million in funding, which enabled us to grow the team, build the technology, enhance it, and get up to speed quicker. So that was the approach that I took there. In general, though, what you tend to see when you're fundraising is that people take different approaches. Of course, you've got a business model of, it's all finger in the wind in reality, especially if you're pre-revenue or early revenue. And there's lots of different ways of trying to value your business. But the reality is, going back to that first piece of advice of speak to lots of people, do lots of pitches, what will happen is the market will value you. So regardless of what you say, you might be trying to raise 200,000 at a 2 million valuation or whatever it is. And the reality is, if you go to 10 people and you say, we're going for 200,000 and you get 10% valuing the business at 2 million, and all 10 people say, no, it's too much, we want 25%, then that's going to be where you end up landing. But as long as you come across as a credible individual, as long as you sell your idea and your concept, then really, if you're a little bit off in terms of what you're asking for, it shouldn't be a killer, because the person on the other end, it views it as a point of negotiation. The reason that it would be a killer is if you're way off. So if you're valuing your idea on a piece of paper at 20 million pounds, people will laugh at you because it's silly. But if you're off by a little bit, it doesn't matter. And you generally, outside of that TV kind of pitch that I did, generally, if you're behind closed doors, it's fine for you to overvalue your business a little bit, because that you're always going to get chipped away in negotiation. So it's okay, but you want to get reference points from other people who have successfully raised, see are their metrics similar to mine, and then at least you got something you can point towards.
Yeah, I think that's really valuable. Obviously, for startup entrepreneurs in particular, getting that valuation is always a sticking point. Like you said, to some it is just that moment where and I think Russell on the session last week said that it is, for a lot, particularly very early stage, that it is just based on projections. So it is really a really difficult thing to do. And in terms of, you mentioned a couple of things in probably your previous two answers. How vital is it that you know not just your business inside out, but the whole market?
So I think fundamentally, to raise investment, you have to convey credibility, because you're asking a person to believe that you can build something in the future that doesn't exist right now, and that you can create enough value to multiply whatever money they're putting in. So you need to show them data points to support that. And to do that, you need to understand the wider industry that your business is operating in. So I think it's absolutely critical. If you're too insular or too siloed, then you won't convey that credibility, and ultimately I think you'll struggle to raise investment. So to answer your question, it's critically important, definitely.
Yeah, excellent. And certainly from off the back of your pitch, you yourself have been praised for your energy, your kind of natural charisma, and it's safe to say that is becoming more of a focus generally among founders in the space at the moment. But what advice would you have for our attendees who are trying to strike a balance between getting your personality, your passion as the entrepreneur across, and the really nitty gritty details of the business and its products or service. Where is that balance?
So to start off, I'd say be yourself. Definitely don't try and project something that you're not. So be exactly who you are and who you're most comfortable with. That's who you want to convey and show. And then in terms of diving into nitty gritty details, again, it depends on the context, but in general, let's pretend you've got a 30-minute meeting with an investor. You need to go into that thinking, what's the aim of this meeting? What is the desired outcome? Now, in real life, it is incredibly unlikely that the outcome of one 30-minute meeting will be a check in your hand and an investment. Instead, a successful outcome will be that you've intrigued them about your idea. They're now really interested. They're going to go away. They're going to Google some of the facts that you said. And then in 24 hours, they're going to reach back out and say, let's go into more depth here. So really, I would say in that first meeting, again, on the assumption that it's a 30-minute or 60-minute window, your aim is to convey your credibility, convey your idea, show the opportunity, and give them enough belief in you that you can execute on that. So I would avoid at nearly all costs going too deep too soon. Instead, you need to pique their interest. And if they dive deep with questions, great, you go there. But the trouble is sometimes entrepreneurs, because they love what they're doing so much and they're so kind of mentally invested in it, they dive so deep so quickly, and the person sitting opposite them is just lost and doesn't care and is uninterested. So instead, you need to start by getting them hooked, by sharing that big vision and big picture, and then go down as they request it or in that second or third meeting.
Excellent. And ordinarily, we'd probably keep the conversation going another sort of 10 minutes or so before we go on to the questions, but we've had so many in that I will just have to ask a couple of kind of questions myself just to round us off before we go to the attendee questions. So obviously plenty of advice in the last half an hour, and you probably touched on a few things, but what are the fundamentals that you think have to be in a pitch?
Sure. So all good pitches fundamentally include the same basic information. So that is the problem, the solution, the model, the market size, traction, and what you're asking for. So what that means is the problem, you're sharing a story about what the problem is, the solution, how does your idea or business solve that problem? The model, how are you going to make money via doing that? The market size, how big can your business be? And traction, what have you done to date that will help the investor believe in you? And then finally, you ask, I need £50,000, £500,000, or £1 million in order to do this. And those are the ingredients. It's as simple as that. What becomes interesting is how do you tie that together to shape a story that's going to excite someone? But a pitch should always include those ingredients.
Excellent. And is there a particular order to those? Because I just interested in that you mentioned the ask last in that order. And I know obviously Dragon's Den is a kind of a different scenario, but obviously in their format, that comes first. So is there a particular order that you think that needs to go through? So
I don't think that there has to be a specific order. I think again, coming back to that initial research, you should only be meeting with an investor if what you're asking for is in their sweet spot. E.g., if you know that someone, the smallest check they write is £1 million and they need to see £100,000 a month recurring revenue, and you don't have those metrics and you only want 50 grand, you shouldn't even speak to them. But if you know that actually an investor's sweet spot is 50 grand and they like the industry that you're in, then whether you say that you're asking for 50,000 at the start or end doesn't matter too much. Personally, I prefer to put that at the end because really it's a point of negotiation. So what I want to do is convey, here's a massive problem, here's what I'm doing and here's why it's a problem. And you might even be able to relate to this and feel it emotionally through a story that I tell. Here's what we're doing to solve it. Here's all of the traction that we have that shows why we believe we can solve it and build a cool business. This is the size of the market. And guess what? For X amount, you can come on this ride with us.
Yeah, and I guess that more broadly, putting that ask first could actually switch them off. Whereas if you're going through the story first, and even if it does happen to be outside their sweet spot, that story could actually make them stand up and listen a little bit more.
Absolutely. Coming back to how I opened, where you never want to seem as if you're singing for your supper. I think by saying what you want up front, you look like you've got your hat in your hand and you're asking for money. But instead, by telling a story and sharing your vision, is much more compelling, in my opinion.
Yeah, absolutely. And so that was the fundamentals of what needs to be in. Are there things that you see that that entrepreneurs put in their pitches that really, really, really don't need to be in there, or even should not be in there?
Well, I think in general, as we said, kind of diving too deep too soon, it could be a negative indicator or a red flag. But the other thing, I suppose, that's really interesting to note is that unlike on TV or on Dragon's Den, it's very rare to get an investment on the spot in your first meeting. So you should be prepared for this. That means that you don't need to try to aggressively close a deal in that first meeting. And if you're trying to do that, you're probably approaching it the wrong way. Instead, it's much better to take a softer approach. So you do all of those things that we talked about, you excite the investor, you pique their interest, and then you wrap up by telling them a few reasons why you'd like them to come on board, and you flatter them, you stroke their ego. But then you tell them that, hey, I've got other funding options. So I need to hear back from you with commitment or not within 2 weeks or within 7 days or within whatever time frame you want to give. And then, of course, you give a little nudge at the halfway point. And then usually, if they are really keen and they want to come in and you've done a great job, they're going to say so within that time frame and early. And if they don't, then no sweat. Move on to the next. As I said, keep kissing those frogs, have lots of conversations.
Yeah, absolutely fantastic. Like I said, we've had quite a few questions come through, so I'll make a start on those. So this one is from Jack, who says, of course, you were almost pitch perfect on Dragon's Den, but is there anything you would have done differently?
Well, firstly, thank you so much, Jack. Very, very kind of you to say so. I was really pleased with the outcome. So to be honest, I don't think there's much that I would change. Maybe if the answers to a few questions that didn't make it to air. But aside from that, under the circumstances, I was content.
Absolutely fantastic. So the next one comes from Mike. I was looking at Jack as well, but combine the two. But Mike says, I played your pitch to all of my team in my office as part of our sales training, and they all said the same. Your why was more important and shone through over what it was that your company did. Do you feel that expressing the reason why you set up the company is more important than just talking about what the company does?
So I think in terms of raising investment, the why is really, really important in terms of you're getting them, depending on the stage you're at, but at the sums that we were after on Dragon's Den, you're really getting someone to believe in you, and they need to believe in your vision and what drives you and what propels that forward. In reality, I was in there, we talked about kind of circa 2 hours. So of course, there was a lot of discussion around the product and the functionality, which didn't make it to air. So we did talk about both, and most investors want both, but really getting them to believe in you and starting with the vision is the most compelling approach, I think.
Excellent, thank you. This one comes from an anonymous attendee, who I think you probably touched on it a bit earlier, but if there's anything that you can expand on, that would be great. So this person says, hi Sam, have you any suggestions on remembering your pitch aside from repeated practice?
Yeah, so personally, what I do is I read it before I go to bed. I think it helps it to stick in my head a little bit better, but then really, it's just that repetition. It's repetition, repetition, repetition. And you really need to make sure that you've got your pitch dialed, because as we talked about, that's the only thing you control in these conversations.
Yeah, and leading on from that nicely, actually, there's one from Megan who says, what's your opinion on having notes for your pitch versus memorizing what you're going to say?
If you can, I would avoid it. And the reason for that is, again, in order to raise investment, you're trying to get someone to believe in you, and you're trying to convey credibility, and you really want to show some passion too. And if you're unable in a 2 or 3 minute time frame to clearly talk about your business and why you can make it succeed without looking at notes, it might indicate that you're not quite ready to kind of lead a team and build a company and build technology, which is all much, much harder than remembering 3 minutes of text.
Brilliant. And another one from another anonymous attendee who says there are a lot of pitch practice groups on Clubhouse. Would you ever suggest trying those, or is it a waste of time? Thank you.
Yeah, I haven't attended one personally, but I don't think it can do any harm. So absolutely attend, listen to other people, see what they do that works really well. Maybe they frame something in such a fantastic way that you want to kind of steal that. Maybe someone else answers something in a brilliant manner and you want to take that. So definitely at any forum, whether it's Clubhouse, whether it's Instagram Live or wherever, or a real life event, I think it's absolutely worth kind of absorbing and soaking up as much as you can.
Yeah, I was just about to say, I guess it's kind of an expansion of your point earlier about attending those events, expanding your network, meeting other founders. It just happens to be on a digital space. So thank you for that. Another one from an anonymous attendee who says, what experience did you have on presenting in general? Did you have any recommended formal training, or was it just a natural gift for it, or a lot of professional practice, or a mixture of the above?
So I'd done nothing to the extent of Dragon's Den before. So that was totally way outside my comfort zone. I had done a few other high profile opportunities, like I'd spoken on Sky News one time prior to Dragon's Den, and I'd done presentations to large groups of employees while I was at Red Bull. So I had a little bit of public speaking experience, but not much. So what I did, I actually reached out to a professional and I asked them to help me and give me feedback on my pitch before Dragon's Den. So I did a session or 2 sessions with them where I just asked them, I said, grill me as hard as you can, because I want to have all of my failures right now, as opposed to live on TV. So I just made sure that I'd been through the ringer and had the toughest session before the real pitch, so that in real life it felt easier.
Excellent. And I guess I guess that having as a lot of entrepreneurs do now, having a mentor can be really, really valuable in that. I know you mentioned about reaching out to other entrepreneurs in a similar industry or similar business to you, but I guess that can be really, really valuable as well, having that more experienced person who's kind of been there and done it.
Absolutely.
So we've got another one from another anonymous attendee who said, I guess we'll take this in the context or out of the context of COVID and pandemic and passing things between one another. But should we always provide handouts of our proposal or pitch or visual aids such as PowerPoint or flip chart?
Again, it depends on the context. So, for example, if you're going to meet an angel investor in a coffee shop, then you're going to have to do it verbally. You might send them a follow-up email with your deck or something, or you might send them an email beforehand. Very likely that they won't read it. You find that out quite quickly. So I think it depends on the context. If you can use visual aids, like a few slides, then sometimes it's good to do so. Generally, if you can show your product, that's always the winning formula, because really someone's investing in you and your product. So the best thing to do, if you can, is if it's a technology business, a website, whatever, bring your laptop, try and give them a really quick demo to show them what it does. But again, try and focus on what's the problem, how you're solving it, why it's an exciting business. Hey, here, have a look. Here's where we are today, but you're not investing in where we are today. You're investing in where we're going to be in the future. So you have to be telling the story of where you're heading, and you're just showing what you've got as a proof point to help them believe that you can get in the direction you're going. I think the mistake people make is focusing too much on what we have now. And then it's very easy for an investor to tear you apart limb from limb, because you're never going to be where you want to be. But instead, if you frame it as good stepping stone and look at what we've achieved on my own, or with a team of 2, or with £10,000, imagine what we can achieve with 50. And I'm going to show you, here's what we can do. So yeah, that's how I would approach it.
Brilliant, brilliant answer. And just again, to throw back to last week's session, something that Russell mentioned, you mentioned about emailing, possibly emailing the deck. He advised to always include your deck in that initial email, rather than doing hey, this is my business, can I send you a deck? Always try to include that in the initial email. So just an extra piece of advice from last week's session. We've got a question from, I hope I pronounced this correctly, Farbod, who asks, says, "Hi Sam, at what stage of product development I guess you were already operating? So at what stage of business were you when you pitched on Dragon's Den?"
So on Dragon's Den, we had a working product with a few thousand users, so we could kind of demonstrate that, and there were 3 or 4 of us in the team, so we could demonstrate, here's what we've done today, here's how we approached it, there's a few thousand people using the platform, and here's where we want to go in the future.
Excellent. Yes, there's another one. I know you touched on this slightly, but again, if there's any expansion on it, that'd be brilliant. So Aaron asks, were you nervous before walking into the pitch? If so, what advice would you give to calm those nerves?
Incredibly nervous, so nervous that I felt like I was going to be physically sick. So you're standing in that lift and you've got butterflies multiplying in your stomach, and then the lift doors open and you walk out and it's total silence. You can see each dragon sitting there in their chair, there's cameras everywhere, and it's so quiet you can hear your own footsteps as you're walking out to this X on the floor, and then you just have to go and you have to start. And I think in terms of how to calm your nerves, I'm not an expert here, but what I do personally is I try to ensure that the night before I can get as much sleep as I can. Often in these situations, you hardly sleep because you're so excited and nervous. But that's the first thing. So you're coming into it with a little bit of rest. And then at the moment or before the moment, just take deep breaths, try and calm your mind. And ultimately, you just want to go out and execute on everything that you've practiced beforehand. And that's why the more that you practice, the calmer and more confident you can feel in those situations.
Excellent. I think that is probably, we probably got time for one more. So Harry asks, do you employ different techniques for different pitches?
I think the techniques are always the same, and that is research your audience, and then just slightly tailor your story so that it's most relevant to that audience, and then you're just conveying your business and your idea. So as simple as that.
Excellent, excellent. So, like I said, that's probably all the time we've got. There are still quite a few questions, but unfortunately, we haven't got time to get through to them. But I know Chloe has put both mine and Sam's LinkedIn profiles into the chat function. So if you do want to connect with Sam to follow up on anything, please do. So before we let you go and let you get on with your day, Sam, one final question from me. If you wanted the audience to come away with 3 key takeaways from today's session, what would they be?
So number 1, have the right mindset. As we talked about, you're not standing there asking for money. Instead, you're inviting them to be a part of an incredible journey with you. Number 2, you need to kiss a lot of frogs. So don't worry if you get 10 no's, 15 no's, 20 no's. That's part of the process. Just recap and take any lessons that you've learned that you can, and then get back on the horse and go out again. And number 3 would be try and build your network, as we talked about. Go to real life meetups or join virtual meetups. Watch things on YouTube or anywhere else to see other pitches, and just try and keep that fire and excitement burning. You've obviously got an idea or a business that you want to move forward with, and just keep that fire alight, keep that excitement going, and drive through all of the roadblocks and barriers. That would be my advice.
Excellent, excellent. Thank you so much, Sam. We've had plenty of messages through the chat function thanking you for the session, and all the advice that you've given has been really, really fantastic and insightful for the last 45 minutes or so. So thank you so much for your time. And with that, I will pass back to Chloe.
Thank you so much, Sam, for sharing your expertise and knowledge with us today. It's been great to have you. As John mentioned, there's been so many incredible comments coming in through the chat function, thanking you for the session as well. We'll be back next week at the same time with Joe Binder as he discusses why an entrepreneur's personal brand is their secret weapon. If there is anything you'd like to catch up on from today's session, we'll be sending out a replay of this recording later on today. You can find the replay and future sessions at www.lightbulb-sessions.heysummit.com. Thank you very much for joining us today, and thank you again, Sam and Jonathan.
Cool. Thanks for having me. I hope that was valuable. Cheers, guys.
Thank you.
Goodbye.